Good evening, dandies. Welcome to Undetermined, the podcast.
So my studio space that I set up in the new house is in a closet, and it's really tight to get in here, to like get behind my mic and get into my chair the way it's set up.
Yeah.
So I set up a pulley system where my mic is hanging from the ceiling.
Oh, good.
And I just pull on this little cord, and it just pulls my microphone
That's great.
up, and I can sit down and then lower it down.
Wow, you've really got to it's a cockpit studio.
My wife just thinks I'm an idiot, which it's a fair point, but it works.
Well, at least you're not taking up the living room.
Right. She should be grateful.
She should be. at least you're not a drummer.
Well, we got one of those in the house too.
You have your son's a drummer.
Yeah, he wanted me to mention. I told him I was talking to a drummer tonight, and he's like, "Mention me."
Okay. Well, sometime once all this craziness is over, you guys got to come out here anyway. Come out for a vacation and visit the studio when you're out here.
Oh, absolutely.
That'd be awesome. Yeah,
that'd be great. That'd be great. So yeah, you're keeping busy. That's good.
Yeah, I'm just the kind of person that needs to I have a lazy streak. So if I just allow myself to sit around, that will continue. I'll build up so much inertia that it'll seem like a task to go to the store.
Right.
Yeah.
So I just, and also I have this studio, and I have three partners that I share the Wally's Hideout with, and it's such a great room. I'm if I ever did have to leave this place, it would be tragic, and I'd have to figure out how to laser shoot every inch of the room to rebuild it somewhere.
Oh,
It's just that kind of party. So I just, I decided that I had to be the one keeping us caught up on rent, and doing whatever sessions can come in, and we've managed to find lots of creative ways to keep the money trickling in. But it's been hard, I just said somebody's got to step in and be the essential worker here too. It's like, even though it's not as essential, it would feel pretty sad if we lost this room. If this studio were to disappear, from our music community, and it would be a.
Well, I would contend music is essential in all of this for so many. Maybe there are a few exceptions to that rule, but I wouldn't make it.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time believing that, that it'll be that easy just to claw back to civilization and, things like even art that we need and music that we need if we're just doing.
I think it was, what was it? Churchill said that, what would be, I can't remember the exact quote, but, he was basically saying that art and music is the whole reason we're fighting this war, it's like, that having freedom of thought and expression is actually sometimes people need to be reminded that we have that. I think that's why we enjoy art so much, is we get caught up in our day-to-day lives, and we forget about this other side of our spirit, and it's nice to be reminded. And for me, I dwell there. If I don't play drums, and if I'm not making stuff actively, I start to get downhearted and sad, and and I just can't really allow that. So I managed we got 2 Dungeon Weed records recorded this year.
Yes,
crazy.
The next one's already in the can, where we're still working on the last bit of it, but it took a little longer because it's a double album. So it's gonna be really great.
And that's a great example, too. I mean, what we're talking about, just being innovative and coming up with new ideas. If there was no pandemic, there would be no Dungeon Weed.
Well, that's right. Yeah, I mean, because it was just sitting on the shelf in Dave's back catalog of ideas, because he's such a prolific dude. I just hit him up. I was like, well, let's just do something, because, I've worked with him as an engineer on past albums, on the Skunk records. I recorded those for him. So, it was like, all right, let's do something here. We had no idea that anybody would even care about it,
Yeah.
But I think that's also kind of one thing that this pandemic has been good for, is that it's just got me back to the craft of making records and getting great drum sounds delivered to people. And I just finished producing a record for this project called the Super Fantastics,
Mhm.
and it's going to come out in May. We just set the release date, and
That you did the mixing for and stuff?
yeah, I played drums, produced, and mixed
Okay,
this
you
album.
played on it too.
So-
All right.
Yeah, and he continued to work with me over the whole pandemic, pretty much. I just noticed he gave me this first deposit January 9th.
Huh.
And so it was kind of before we knew how bad the pandemic was going to be. We
Yeah.
started on it, thankfully. And then, thank God for Wally's Hideout. He decided to keep going, and he even got really excited about it. And he took advantage of the fact that it didn't take 3 weeks ahead to book a day here. And,
Yeah.
it sped up. We actually did a lot of work on the record. I brought in horn arrangements and string arrangements and backing vocal arrangements on various tunes throughout the album. And, was able to provide some work for some session players who really appreciated it, and got really great work because they had lots of time to work on the arrangements. And, I'm not one of those producers that likes to tell people what to do. If I bring a player in, if I bring in someone to write a horn arrangement, I give them the song, I tell them kind of what I'm trying to do, and I trust that they're going to know how to put that to the horn arrangement.
Mm-hmm.
Same with the vocal arrangement. I've done whole film scores that way, just trusting my team, because I've been in San Francisco now playing gigs and doing recording sessions and just in the scene since 1989.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people, and I'm just kind of good at picking the person that's right for the particular job, and I've just kind of made that a production approach.
Yeah. You probably told me when you were on before, but when did you start at Wally's?
It was like October, I guess, 4 years ago.
About 4 years?
Yeah.
Yeah, historic spot, man.
Yeah, and I was working here with Pamela Parker.
Yeah, that's right.
On a record that came out about a year ago, and we were just recording down in Studio A mostly, which is where she works.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't even know about this room up here. I thought Studio A was where, and then I heard our keyboard player had a side project, and he recorded up here this thing called Fat Cat, and I heard the drum sounds, and I was like, oh. And then I met Jameson Durr, who's the guy that's been running this room for the last 15 years, and he and I became friends, and he was sharing the room with this guy Scott McDowell, another producer who's done work for Head in the Heart and a bunch of indie. He's really big in the indie rock scene.
Mm-hmm.
Jamie works for Sammy Hagar and Joe Satriani, and he's like,
oh, cool,
super top level guy. And so they needed a partner, and there were no drums in this room. So I just kind of said, all right, well, I'll come in and be a partner and start to bring clients in. And it just changed my whole trajectory, I think, because it got me to sharpen my skills as an engineer and a producer, and being in such an ideal drum tracking room, it got me thinking, wow, I could, over time we could get this thing brought back to even greater than its former glory,
right?
And so we've added all kinds of lighting and new gear, and we just added a new interface. So we're combining like the latest converters and top technology with this Burl mothership that we got, with the analog preamps and vintage mics and the great sounding room. So it's kind of a best of both worlds scenarios. By the end of this next month, we'll have the carpets switched out, which are ancient, in the control room. And we've done a lot of painting. I mean, it's been a year-long project.
Might be able to kick enough cocaine rocks out of that carpet and pay for some of that.
I don't know. The funny thing about this carpet is that I think it's been here since the 80s, and it really looks like it. It's like it's time to go. But we've got a stack of parquet out in the hall there. It's going to go down over the wood floor section. We're going to replace all that and put new carpet down. in 2 weeks.
Nice.
You should like make a list of all the artists that were in the room recording when that carpet was in there, and then just sell off chunks of that carpet.
Right,
It's
exactly.
a good idea.
I'm pretty sure no one wants any of it. Yeah, but
I don't know.
But no, it's going to be it's kind of crazy how much time I've spent just learning like this new system that we got. It has audio over Ethernet without getting too technical. It enables us to network the way IT professionals do. Where so we can now say have a horn section and strings down in Studio A, and with an Ethernet cable, we can be plugged in to the same computer up here, and we can track in both rooms simultaneously.
Oh, cool.
Wow.
And we can track with all kinds of plugins so that in your headphones you can hear it almost like it's mixed with no latency. And
Right,
and
that was the thing. Yeah, I was like,
Yeah.
God, how do you beat the latency on that?
Yeah, they fixed a lot of that stuff. It's incredibly, because right now it's giving you the cue out or the headphone mix out right off the card, so it's not passing the signal through the computer and through the board and everything.
I
So
see.
that's also how those Apollo UA ones work too.
Right.
And that's similar kind of routing strategy. But yeah, it's super complex, and it has just another whole area of expertise that you have to add now, because you now have to be an IT professional in order to get sound out of your DAW.
Yeah, that's right. Well, yeah, and that's the big bane of our existence, though. Made our ears perk up, I'm sure. Just the latency problem is such an issue.
Oh yeah.
I hope they can straighten that out too, just for home PC use and stuff with sound cards, because
Right.
it'd be so much better for people taking lessons online or recording together particularly recording together online.
Remote stuff. Yeah, I don't know if they beat the latency remotely. It sounds like you're still in the same building.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that's exactly it. But there are ways to do it. There's a thing called Jack Trip now that this team at Stanford perfected over the course of the pandemic, because it enables you to jam together in real time.
Yeah.
With 0.5, I think it's 5 milliseconds.
Wow.
Of latency.
Yeah.
Which is pretty good.
I don't think you could expect better than that.
No, but of course you've got the speed of light as a limiting factor, so it only works within a radius of 200 to 300 miles, I think.
Oh, I see. So you couldn't do an East Coast, West Coast.
Not yet.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure we're going to get that just because of the speed of light being a limiting factor.
Right.
Yeah.
However long it takes to, yeah.
Yeah, to take a beam of light to get from California to New York would take longer than 5 milliseconds.
Yeah, you're always going to have that. I guess
So
that's true.
there's that. But anyway, they've made a lot of advancements, and there's several programs for online collaboration remotely. There's one called Pedal that's out of Norway. It combines a video chat a la Zoom with a cloud-based collaboration setup, so that you can use Logic and other guy can use Reaper and I can use Pro Tools. We can record but you record kind of one at a time. You don't record simultaneously. So, but you can be listening in New York while I'm putting my drum track down, and then I can sit there and watch you on the video thing while you put your guitar part on top of what I just played.
Yeah.
And go back and forth.
Right, but you can't feed off of each other live, which would be ideal.
Not unless you're really close geographically,
Right.
Which kind of makes it less valuable, because if it's someone who's geographically close, I'll just get them here.
Right.
If I really want to play with them and they're within 200 miles, get in the car.
Yeah. Well, and it's but with, like you say, pandemic technology, it's
right.
Kind of interesting that we got forced into that hole, and it was okay, what if we can never see each other again?
Right. And aside from this client, one of the big ways that I was able to bring money in was that I've done a ton of remote drum tracking.
Mm-hmm.
And I certainly, I did some of that before, but this process has been accelerated. We've had to do a whole lot of remote work.
Yeah.
Over the course of the whole year. So.
Yeah, we talked to Matt Chamberlain a while back, And he talked about how he's doing a lot of that sort of thing too, just working from home, and how there's advantages to it. Like he has all of his toys.
Yep.
Right. So it's really easy for him to like, oh, well, let's try this, as opposed to if he's there in person, right? He might be able to feel things out differently, but he has access to way more.
Yeah. I've got all the drum kits here. I've got everything set up, and this is where it's actually been great, because sometimes people don't need to watch while the cake's getting baked anyway.
Right.
So I'll do a thing where I'll make a link in the DAW.
Yeah.
There's also a program called Listen To that lets you send a link. You put a plug-in on an insert in your DAW on the master fader, the last slot, and then that sends out a real-time. Again, it's a very short latency. But nearly real time, super high quality feed right from your mixer.
Mm-hmm.
So that enables the person to get a really good listen in on my tones, and determine, oh, do you like that kick sound, or do you like the part I'm playing?
It makes it easier to customize, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Side note conversation. I was just reading an article. It's interesting. Pablo Escobar back in the 80s apparently had 4 hippopotami.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. I read this. Yeah. And now there's a big hippo problem in Colombia.
Yeah. It's 100 miles outside of Medellin. There's 80 hippos.
And they're now saying people can hunt hippos or something like that. They're talking about killing a lot of them.
Animal rights people are like, yeah, should we kill them? And scientists think they need to kill them. They're like, no, don't kill them. It's amazing. But yeah, it's just weird. Would that really be so different than any other exchange in history, though, with the fact that, horses are here and they're not from here, or cattle are from Asia, I say let them go. See what happens.
What could go wrong?
I guess kick ass to have South American hippos, A lot of the people, that's the consensus, I guess, of a lot of people around there outside the villages, outside Medellin. They're like, no, we love our hippos.
Are they dangerous to the habitat?
Oh, I'm sure. They're hippos.
Yeah.
They're probably fucking everything up. Everything.
Or maybe just have a hippo reserve or something like that.
Yeah. I'd say it's not the first time we've done something ecologically damaging with animals.
No.
Why not give it a shot?
What a crazy thing to decide you want pet hippos,
Right.
Well, apparently they've been breeding, and they're kind of becoming an ecological problem in Colombia right now.
Yeah, there's not a lot of room for hippos to range.
That's a good point.
They're meant to be in a big area, right?
Yeah. I think so. I'm not a big but I'm an agent of chaos, so I'm just let them go, see what happens.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I'm sure it will happen, all of it.
Yeah, probably. People are really fighting to keep the hippos.
Sorry about that. My studio partner was stopping by with the carpet samples that we're kind of picking between, and the cushion for the new couch. So he wanted to get some photos of them and just kind of look at it in the space.
You know what? I'm with Matt on that, though. I'd buy a piece of that carpet. I'm sort of a niche collector of weird shit anyway.
Hey, man, I'll make sure to save you a piece when we rip it up.
Yeah, it's a little 3x3 chunk.
Yeah. There's a piece that somebody actually did a weird pattern in, they burned an arrow into the carpet itself.
Huh.
It looks sort of like they branded the carpet. I don't know. I'll cut out. Oh, I know who did it. I think I'll cut you that piece.
Right.
I don't think you would have heard of him. He's this German producer, guitarist guy, but named Matthias Madeira. But it's crazy how many, especially if you want to get into engineers and producers, but even just how many great artists there are that.
Yeah.
Because of the way the music business has gone, there was an explosion of people making recordings that weren't backed by labels from 99 up until now. We have all this music that's being made that's not really being properly shared with the public.
Yeah. For
lack of I could use a bunch of marketing terminology, but I was trying not to.
Yeah.
But all that terminology applies. It's I've been producing records for 15 years or so.
Yeah.
And I can count the number of them that had PR budgets on one hand.
Right.
And 2 of those projects are current. So, I mean, it just kind of shows you how, like, all the great music that Griddle made,
Right.
we never got really anything beyond Pandora and Bandcamp to disseminate the music. And we made like a lot of physical CDs and sold those, but nobody was really trying to get us press or anything except for us. I've now realized that that's an exercise in futility. When clients are coming through the studio, I almost always advise them to try to save a third of your budget for PR. And people don't. It's not a very sexy way to spend your money. So it takes somebody who's pretty smart to get why they have to do that. Most people just have already given up that they're going to make money off of this shit, and even though it's quite possible if you're willing to promote it.
Well, and I think too, there's sort of a fear and a trepidation that comes with that, just in the fact that even like when we started this podcast, I mean, like we shy away from sponsorship and everything like that, not because we don't want to make money, but first of all, I think partly because we don't really know what we're doing.
We still don't. We know how to record stuff at this point and talk to people.
Yeah.
Our PR game is not strong.
Right. And it's so easy to say, well, I'm not a sellout, but honestly, making a living at this would be great. It's kind of a shame. I didn't get turned on to Griddle really until just like about a year and a half ago. I think it was John Axtell sent me a Griddle track.
We're actually writing again. Kevin Seal and I decided, it's been 5 years since we put anything out, but we're all still friends, and we all still are in contact, and shit, I'm parked here at like one of the best studios in the world. And I use Kevin a lot on, for session work on stuff that I'm producing, because he's just so good at coming up with the perfect part without me having to tell him what to do. And I was just like, Kevin, let's just start writing some stuff again. And it turns out that when you get just 2 people together to begin with the blank page, it goes a little smoother than when you have all 4 of us together in the room at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And Kevin was really the best in the Griddle bunch at the blank page moment. So he and I just really, we've started a bunch of ideas and we got the first one finished and just released it. It's up on Bandcamp right now in a pre-release format, and it's gonna
the Public Eye.
Yeah, the Public Eye, and its formal release date, I guess, is the 18th of February. It'll be up on all the Spotify and all the other outlets. And Kevin and I decided we're going to do a song every month, and then 2 weeks after that, we're going to put out a back catalog release.
Oh, cool! Starting
with the first record, and we're going to because those albums are available on CD and on Bandcamp, but you can't really stumble across them anywhere.
Yeah.
You kind of have to find it on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And, it just occurred to me that there's just so much of this music that's out there that got what I like to call soft released, but it's not really monetized in any way that you could obtain your money. It's just kind of, it's not really distributed. It's just kind of posted.
Right.
And there's still a lot of that going on. And, DistroKid and the CD Baby and these companies that don't get a piece of the royalties at all, they're basically just kind of posting it for you.
Right.
It's a glorified social media outlet, really.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's been a process I've been on in the last 3 or 4 years, just trying to better understand the way the royalties and the payouts work and how to construct a better arrangement for artists, now that things are changing and we can actually target market in a much more affordable way, and you don't have to just do blanket advertising that costs huge amounts of money.
Right.
Like with Dungeon Weed, sometimes you don't have to advertise at all.
Right.
Sometimes you just find your niche audience through direct contact. And, in his case, it's hard to advocate for the streaming thing, really, just because, the mass market stumble across thing for that is probably not going to be huge. And you need a real mass market kind of reach. You need mass market numbers for Spotify to pay.
Yeah.
But I kind of wish he would. But, it's up to Dave. It's really his call.
Yeah.
And he's kind of like against, and I also get the point. It's like the way it's been set up, the labels get all that publishing money still.
Mm-hmm.
So it really comes down to that. It's like unless you're getting publishing and songwriting royalties, it's not going to add up to much.
Mm.
But if you're getting both, it can. Interestingly, I just learned from my entertainment lawyer yesterday that it's now possible for independent artists to sign up for the Music Licensing Collective. Do you guys know about that?
Huh.
It's a solution that was part of the Music Modernization Act that just passed.
Oh, okay.
The problem that it solves is that if you didn't have a publisher, i.e. if you were an unsigned band,
Mm-hmm.
and you didn't have a publishing administrator, someone to go and collect your publishing royalties,
Right.
there was no real mechanism for you to obtain any of that.
Like enforce that.
Yeah, or even get it to you. It's like there was no, and so they got it included in the legislation and made all of the DSPs pay for it.
Huh.
So they now have a thing that you can sign up for, and you register your works through them, and there's a connect to collect kind of thing they have set up in there. Then you can actually collect your publishing without formally setting up a publishing company and trying to administer it yourself, which is what Griddle did originally. Like we started our own publishing company back in the day thinking that we were being smart. But the problem was that there wasn't a whole lot of publishing going on.
Yeah.
And so we were able to collect, I think I was getting checks for, at the peak, maybe $120 a quarter or something, when we were, when there was a lot of Pandora plays going.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
But, it's different now. And so I'm kind of thinking that it might be cool to see what happens if we just release these back catalog Griddle records and see if maybe some people stumble across it and like it. And I don't know. It just seems like smart for us to.
Yeah. Reach out to the people that are digging Dungeon Weed. Hey,
Yeah.
if you like these guys, we got the same drummer.
And there's also the possibility that, we could find a little bit of our niche audience the way that Dungeon Weed did. And, Dave's, he knows who to send stuff to.
Yeah.
He's a very sharp character. He really knows what he's doing.
There was something about that was, it has to be, I also attributed the fact that, there's some slick art and it's just a good damn album. But I remember even telling you, and I probably told this before, is like you sent me a link to Mind Palace, and I was like, yeah, that's the third time I've gotten this, like today. And you were like, oh, I'm sorry if I've been inundating everybody's inbox with this, but I'm just trying to show. I was like, no. I was like, you sent it to me. An old friend of mine from high school from Minnesota sent it to me. And then another old friend from high school in Illinois sent it to me.
Wow.
And and it was like 3 people that same day. One of them was you, but I was like, I know that cat.
That's kind of crazy that
it is crazy
the way that happens. And ultimately that just proves that we just got to do the work.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a believer in just honing the craft, always trying to figure out better ways to make the song or the sound better. And you can't really play to the crowd, I guess is what I'm trying to say. You just got to keep doing it and do what you think is good. And that's what I guess that's pretty much what gives me joy too about making music. So I guess maybe I'm justifying the way I want to do it.
Yeah.
I know lots of people do it differently, but I really think that most of the people that resonate with their audience are doing it because they're being honest.
Yeah.
And you can't necessarily contrive that. It's about just saying something and having other people say, oh yeah, I can identify with that.
Yeah. I love the record, man. I'd say it's definitely, it's doom, it's stoner metal, but it's not contrived that way. It doesn't try to act like that sort of record.
Yeah. I really was impressed with the way he was able to interpolate riffs we all know without copying them exactly.
Right.
He's great at that. And that's a hard skill because it's really easy to ape something, but to really get the essence of that feel and that sound and it's definitely, it's fun to play to it also, even though I had to at the first part, when I first started working on the tracks, it took me some time to conceive of parts that were slow enough or that were heavy enough because if you're If you're a little bit behind, you kind of give it a little more weight.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a little ahead, you give it a little more energy.
A little sludgier.
So it's like I had to really dial it back, because
Yeah.
it's definitely the heaviest stuff I've ever recorded. That's for sure.
And kind of what you were saying before, I agree. Like listening to it like the first time, there was something like, this feels like I know it.
Yeah.
Right? I know I don't know it. I can't sing along, but I feel like I know it anyway.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like a rip-off of anything. It still had its own identity,
Right.
I like to use the term touchstones. That, like this is something that we thought about a lot when we were working on the Griddle music, and I kind of take that, I guess, when I was working on the Super Fantastics record, I was doing the same thing. Like, okay, looking at the song as they have it, and then trying to figure out, like, how can I bring in elements that are going to resonate with people's memory banks,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe trigger feelings that they had when they were listening to that little lick that you borrowed from. One of the songs, I can do this with Kevin, but I mean, Dave and I have a similar kind of rapport. It's like, he can say, like, give me a reference point. Like, oh, okay, I'm going to sort of play in that vein or whatever.
Right.
One time on the Super Fantastics record, I was trying to think of a way to get to frame this song a little better in the beginning. And I was like, can you give me a Procol Harum on this?
Yeah.
I need a Procol Harum.
Mm-hmm.
He knew that meant he was on the B3, so he knew exactly that meant to start the tune with like a strong melody right out of the gate to get the listener engaged with that organ tone, like they do on Whiter Shade of Pale.
Right.
But you kind of develop some crazy lingo with your musicians, and because we have to find the sort of the shorthand to get to those touchstones, because you don't want to have to spend too long describing the thing.
Right.
I mean, it's amazing when it's a real touchstone. You just got to play a little bit of it, and it's like, there it is, and it's and people like Kevin Seal or Dimitri, they can like set that up in a way that you don't have to talk about it much,
Right.
Like there was another moment with Kevin where I just in my head I heard the Mario Brothers theme. And I was like, hey, can you Mario Kart that for me? Like right in that little gap. And sure, he like totally nailed it. I didn't have to say anything else, So, but those touchstones sometimes are sneaky ways to kind of subliminally draw the listener in and get them moved, emotionally. And I think like Dave's very aware that he's doing that. But he's doing it in a way that's very crafty.
Right. It's not dissimilar from like an effective, movie director or stage director. Okay, I want you to think about this.
Absolutely.
Right. When you're acting out that scene.
Sure.
Right. And when you're doing music like that, there's a visual component. Like it's an epic kind of a concept album kind of a vibe. And if you don't think visually with that kind of heavy music, it gets repetitive.
Yeah.
I mean, we're both together, we're creating some scenes. And I think that's part of why the first record was effective. And
yeah,
we're even going further with that on the second record.
That kind of reminds me, of just kind of a flashback to, back in the day when you really had to kind of work a little bit more to discover music and what's out there. And sometimes you had to just like take a gamble on what an album cover looked like. Well, I like the name and this cover looks good. I might check it out. You ever do that and you bought like a record that sounded nothing like the sleeve?
Right. Totally. I think Dave attributes big part of the appeal of the record to the artwork. And I agree. I mean, I've got a famous painter friend who's done some covers for me in the past. His name is Stephen Tompkins, who you guys should talk to at some point in the future. I'll link you guys up. He's a visual artist, but he's got a music mind. He's a really great guy. But anyway, he saw the artwork and he's like, oh, I want to have this painted on my kitchen wall. He's like, that's saying something. I mean, his stuff gets sold in galleries and
wow,
all over the place. And actually, I've been talking to him about supplying us with some artwork for some of the upcoming Griddle releases. So
right on.
Hopefully we'll be able to make that happen.
Man, and talking about another thing that probably needs a little more PR. I was looking, Dimitri today posted like the new Wizard t-shirt that was out.
Oh, that thing looks great. The skunk shirt. Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
I didn't even know, I didn't know about your TeePublic or his TeePublic site or whatever. I went there. So I've ordered one of the Ouroboros, or Ouroboros, however you want to pronounce it. The snake eating its tail, but you've got the one, the Dungeon Weed one with the, looks like a wicked space caterpillar or something.
It's cool that we're building up Dungeon Weed merch, and it's fucking exciting, man.
Well, the artwork's cool as hell. I love his art.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what he's going to come up with for number 2.
Oh yeah.
He just played me a couple of sequences that he recorded recently. They're going to be like interstitial bits, and I'm going to do some sound design and Foley to kind of flesh out the visual scenes in those parts. And
cool.
So yeah, we're gonna do some. It's gonna be some atmospheric, cool stuff, and we take our time because we have four sides. It's a double album, so
yeah,
there's a lot of great material coming on this thing. I'm really excited that I've been a part of so much great music this year.
Mm-hmm.
I've got another record we haven't even talked about. This band called the Neverlutionaries.
I like that.
Yeah, and this is the guy. The songwriter is named Christopher Wells, and he's from North Carolina. He's one of my closest buddies, and we've worked together a lot here. And I believe in what he's doing, so I said, hey, let's work together on some tracks. And he and I kind of started putting this thing together, and he's pulled in some other characters, from LA and Nashville, and he's got a lot of really cool people on the project. There's another drummer that's played on some of the other songs too, but I've done most of the work, here. All the drumming and most of the production has happened here at Wally's Hideout.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it he's done it in his house, but all of it's gotten mixed by my partner Jamie, and mastered by Justin Weiss. And it's coming out, I guess, in March.
Okay.
There's a single called Ariana that's already been released that's up on Spotify. You can check that out. That album's coming out, and he's got, PR support for that thing. So he's already getting lots of interviews and stuff, and that's kind of cool. Yeah, so I feel like it's been a wildly productive year considering all the craziness that's been happening.
Yeah, we find probably the majority of people we talk to, at least who are creative, at least they're creating and, or at least, digging things out that they've had to put on the back shelf and when other things got busy. And I really like that aspect of it, that we're seeing some stuff that could have, like Matt said earlier, could have been lost.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have had time to do all this work, and certainly not in the way that I did. And on top of that, when I was getting the unemployment money, I didn't have to get paid, but I still wanted to be here working.
Yeah.
So I ran a special where I just said, okay, I'm going to cut my prices in half for remote drum tracking. So send me your tracks, and it's $100 a song, and I'll give you a finished professional drum track. Yeah. And people jumped on it. I did between beginning of July and the end of December, I did like over 80 songs for people that way.
Wow.
And that's in addition to these records. So I'm like, it's been a great year. I've been practicing every day and learning to engineer better and produced and mixed a record. So I can't complain. It's been, I feel like I've been pretty lucky.
Yeah.
And it's been good. And I'm going to do another special actually.
Oh yeah.
It's getting a little slow here, and we definitely need to. We can't fall behind on the studio rent. So
yeah,
I think I'm going to do another one just to make sure that next month is that we still have enough, because there's you can't really bring a band in here right now with the numbers the way that they are. Usually this room is great for bringing your whole band in and tracking all together. That's kind of what we typically try to do, because it's just what the room's built for. But obviously we're not doing that these days, and I'm not doing a whole lot of outreach to try to find new customers or new clients or anything like that. So it just seems like it's the remote tracking thing is the safest way to work and bring in money. And there are a lot of people making records at home on their laptops with finger drums.
Right.
It's amazing the songs that I've gotten to play on. There's some really great music being made.
Do you feel like you've been pushed musically? Like maybe it's kind of helped you expand your horizons as a musician?
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think, well, for one thing, it's made me realize that I have to, constantly be pushing myself in terms of my fundamentals, which is something that over the earlier part of my drumming life, I kind of just played. I learned what I needed to learn to play with the band I was in,
Mm-hmm.
or to prepare for the next show or session or whatever. I didn't really spend a whole lot of time just saying, okay, I'm gonna work on my left hand lead paradiddle diddle for the next 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
But I've been doing that this year, and I've just been pushing myself because I just have the feeling that I'm going to be getting all this stuff. I want to be ready to play it. I have to have the lexicon in my hands. And so I've been more motivated to push myself than ever before. Honestly, I wish I had been a little more disciplined about the fundamentals earlier, but I'm trying to fill in the gaps now. I do have good chops.
Oh, sure.
I'm not a hack or anything, but I definitely can see now that I'm at this level, and my peers all have really good fundamentals, and I just feel like, okay, it's time for me to go and shore that up.
All right.
So I feel like this year's been a good, I've been working as a drummer a lot, so it just is natural to say, okay, well, I'm going to put in time at the practice pad with the metronome every day.
Yeah.
And, after this many months, I am seeing results. Believe it or not, you definitely see results.
And I mean, when you're gigging, you've got, you get so much feedback from that, even if it's internal feedback of what you're carrying on, but it's good. I mean, if you can't get that sort of feedback from fans or from yourself, then, I mean, you got to just buckle down. And
yeah, I mean, I kind of feel like the feedback you get from the fans kind of keeps you going, sure. But in a way, it was great to not have that, because it's just me and what I can record, and what sound did I just make, and how loose does it sound, and how accurate am I, and I started really kind of being able to be more honest with myself about where I was, truthfully, and I think that just taking that other perspective elevated the quality of my tracks, and I've always been geared towards supporting the song. I'm not like trying to be a super flashy drummer, but when you add just a little more fluidity to your playing because you're practicing every day, it really changes the way the tracks come out. And maybe when you're playing live, you can get away with it, but when you're under the microscope of the studio and you go back in the room and you play it back, and you can hear every little flaw, and you're not going to be perfect, but if you want to, you got to give yourself the most fluid kind of, you got to get out of the way as much as possible if you want to be close to perfect, So anyway, I mean, it's been, I don't know, I guess I feel blessed to have had the opportunity to really do something to move myself forward and make some music and keep the studio going. I can't complain. Like I said, I hope this thing gets, this pandemic gets wrestled to the ground quickly, because I know I'm not there are so many people that are really struggling and really suffering, and I feel like I'm happy to just be treading water. I'd be happy if I were just treading water,
Right. I think maybe it helps you in a weird way that you were already kind of that personality. We talked about that the last time you came on, just I want to figure out how to make a living doing what I love. Right. So you'd already kind of learned, I got to cut corners where I can and take advantage of things where I can and really focus on what I can do and how I can make this. So you were already in that frame of mind, which I think has probably served you well in all of this.
Yeah. And plus, I feel like, just in these last 4 years, I've stepped into a real once in a lifetime opportunity.
Yeah.
Being able to be a partner in a studio like this, and to get the mentoring that I've gotten from Jameson and Scott, and just being able to be in the hallways talking to Joe Miguel and, whoever else might be strolling down the hallway, talk about production stuff or drumming stuff or the newest plugin that we just checked out, or, and it just has been, like I said, there aren't that many places like this left.
Yeah.
And
there'll be even less after this pandemic. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I didn't want this place to be, one of those pandemic casualties. And, it's amazingly, the whole building has been, everybody's still going, and nobody's lost their studio here. And, we've all gotten a little rent help from the owner of the building. He reduced the rent by like 20%.
Oh, nice.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so that's helped the last couple of months. That's been in effect. And, I think that we just got to hunker down and make it through this year and, use the time to write a lot of stuff,
What's the tone out there? Anyway, San Francisco was a...
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty quiet on the streets right now. I think people started to kind of slip back into a everyday living a little bit too much, and I think now, we've been in the shelter in place thing. It got extended indefinitely, I think yesterday or today.
Oh, wow.
The numbers here are pretty high in California in general, and San Francisco has been kind of spared that up until now. Our numbers were not as severe in the first lockdown phase as in other parts of the country, but I think it's pretty bad now. And but I'm actually going to go and get a vaccine tomorrow.
Oh,
I got a text message saying that I'm eligible.
Nice.
I have a massage client that's a cancer patient. And she's been a long time massage client of mine. That was one of the ways I used to make money before I became a musician, and she's the one holdout that I still take care of, and because she pays me through in-home support services.
Yeah.
So I end up as one of the home care workers I got on the early list.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So this way I could still, she's got immunosuppressant drugs and everything like that. So this way I can still go and work on her and give her a massage and everything once a week. And
Nice.
and that'll help make me feel safer here at the studio too, so.
Yeah.
I got my first shot this week.
Cool.
Good.
Yep, I did.
I'm yet to get one, which is strange.
It's kind of crazy that the new administration stepped in and found that there was no really credible
Reason for it to be held back. Yeah.
Yeah, there's no plan in place. They're like, we don't have to rework anything. We got to start from whole cloth. I can't even fathom, that right now we've had more deaths than we had in World War II.
Yeah.
Because a narcissistic leader didn't want his mask, the mask to melt his makeup or whatever. It's like,
right. Well, and that's just the thing, isn't it? It's the narcissism. It's the fact, that no matter what he's doing on policy or not doing on policy, when it's very obvious that the guy spent 92% of his day thinking about and posting about and tweeting about himself.
Oh, God.
There's no way he's getting anything done. The incompetence was just, it's like, you should, conservatives, he says a lot of things. Yeah, he does.
It shouldn't feel weird to watch a president talk and not brag the entire time. Like, it was nice to see Biden get up there and show empathy instead of look at me and how awesome I am. And I did this great.
Yeah.
And they're saying these awesome things, and we don't know who they are, but they all obviously love Trump.
Everybody says I'm great. Yeah. Well, what's really crazy to me isn't that he acted. He said he was going to do everything he did, right down to contesting his loss.
Mm-hmm.
He told us. It was no surprise. What I think surprises me is how much a reflection of us he really turns out to be.
Sure. Right.
And that, I think, is the fact that so many people were willing to support him right up until the end.
Sure.
And still do.
Yeah. And I think that the fact that we have never really finished off the racists when they lost the wars.
Oh, yeah.
When the Civil War was lost, we tried to hold the Union together by giving the South the right to oppress people. And when World War II was won, we let the Nazis come here.
Right.
3,000 or 5,000 of them. And we kind of let their political ideology
seep in.
Dominate the Republican Party for 50 years.
Yeah.
And so such that now I think we really have to ask ourselves what purpose the Republican Party serves.
Yeah.
I think they need to split. If they're not willing to expel the seditionist people, the people who still contested the electoral count after that whole siege, they came back in and 100 House delegates
Yeah.
still went through with this stunt. Still tried to deceive the public, even though they're supposed to serve the public. Those people, if they're allowed to stay on, I think the Republican Party needs to be voted out. We have to do our work to get them out in 2 years. Like they think. I mean, what we have to do too is we have to do something for the people so they don't win a bunch of seats.
Yeah.
If we half step it and we try to reach across the aisle right now,
Right.
they're going to win again next time.
Sure.
No, we can't. I mean, yeah.
We have to take out. We got to get the filibuster out of there so that we can get some things passed. You know?
Yeah.
I saw some ideas for like maybe not necessarily all out eliminating the filibuster, but for kind of flipping the script a little bit that would make it a little more interesting. Like it would have to be not necessarily 60 pro votes, but it would have to be like 41 against votes that would have to.
Oh, right. So if you want to filibuster, you have to prove that it's because right now one person can filibuster, which is insane.
Right.
Yeah. But maybe that would make sense. So if you have a real coalition of people saying no fucking way, but still that will get abused.
Oh, sure.
Because they'll just whip those votes.
Yeah.
I mean, Tom DeLay and Newt Gingrich proved that the Republican Party doesn't really intend to play fair anymore.
No.
Because the demographics are against them, and they know that they will never again win with a plurality.
Right.
They won't.
Right. And the people that are going to complain about it are the people that are going to complain no matter what.
Yep.
Yeah.
And don't see hypocrisy. Don't see any of those things that are pointed out. And, it's like you said, too, really the problem is the people. And I was talking to Lisa Ummer about this earlier. Shout out to Lisa. But, she's talking about just all the observation of racists and everything around Texas. And I said, the big problem is just like when the KKK was busted up in sort of busted up in the 60s. Institutionally, you can get rid of those things, but the people are always going to be there.
Yeah.
But the people don't need to have institutional power.
Right.
And when we did quote bust up the KKK, I mean, you guys got to remember that the Justice Department itself was started to fight the KKK.
Right.
So we didn't really ever take them out.
Nope.
We never really did. And I don't feel like at any point the punishment for being a member of a white supremacist hate group has ever been severe. And that's why all those people felt like they weren't going to go to jail when they were parading around the Capitol with a Confederate fucking flag.
Right. And planting pipe bombs.
Right.
Yeah. If any of that stuff happened at a Black Lives Matter or Occupy protest, they would be using it for a decade to justify the most draconian crackdown you've ever seen.
Absolutely.
It would be like there would be people actually killed over that shit.
Yeah.
How great is it, though, you're kind of flipping the script a little bit, that Biden selected Merrick Garland as the new Attorney General?
I know. That's fucking rich.
How scared would you have to be if you're the Republican that fucked that guy over?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And he's now in charge.
Right. And the thing, too, is that they're all going to try to say that the Democrats are doing the same thing they just did, using the Justice Department for political reasons, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. But the fact of the matter is that if we don't hold this authoritarian to account, it will be worse next time.
Mm-hmm.
Tom Cotton is coming.
Right.
Tom Cotton is in the wings. He's waiting to do the fascist move.
Right. And if they argue the bias argument on Garland, they have to concede that they really fucked him.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's like, well, he could almost say, yeah, I'm fucking you back.
Right. He's biased against us because we kept him from becoming a Supreme Court justice. Yeah. You kept him from becoming a Supreme Court. Let's discuss that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the truth of the matter is that if the Democrats were to stonewall at any point when the Republicans have power, it's like the biggest crisis in the world,
Of course, sure.
It's like, oh my God, the end of the world is here. I mean, Obama, like when Obama wore a tan suit, it was like, oh my God, the biggest fucking thing. But, meanwhile, we've got a president who's like admitting that he's a sexual I mean, he's actually
Predator.
been accused of rape like more than a dozen times.
Sure.
You know, it's like the chances that he's never raped anybody are very slim.
Yeah.
Like zero. Yeah.
Yeah. Where there's smoke,
Yeah.
I guarantee you. Yeah.
But I mean, just to get back to like what it means that he was able to do that, you know, that all he had to do was, and let's not forget, he got elected by promising the working man that he has been forgotten, and he was going to help him.
Right.
He was going to help those forgotten factory workers and the coal workers, and you know, he told all those poor white people that he was going to help them.
Yep.
And you know, the real thing is that should have never been an opening. That strategy should have.
Right.
How the fuck did we cede the populist ground? Well, because we reached across the aisle so hard for 50 fucking years because we're afraid of the Southern strategy. So now we lost our base. That's what that meant. And so right now, if we don't get FDR progressivism, we will become the next fascist authoritarian country.
Yeah.
We have to,
Yeah.
right? And I'm all for being fair. And that's kind of where the problem lies, is some people are like, yes, it's good to be fair. It's good to try and work together. It's good to try and form some unity. But when the other side absolutely refuses to do it, sometimes you got to say, fuck you, we're going to do it this way.
Yeah.
You had your chance.
It has to be like that.
And quit trying to play the game anymore of image as much as, you know, Trump was a narcissist. I mean, I had a friend of mine earlier from Arizona who messaged me, and he says he voted for Biden. He's always been a conservative. He's like, you know, I voted for Trump that time. It was a huge mistake. You know, this guy's also Latin, so he's like, you know, yeah, I think Trump's a giant fucking racist. I'm done with it.
Yeah.
And voted for Biden, but he's still a conservative.
Right.
And he was like, you know, I'm sure that, you know, Biden's just pissed off that everybody's focusing on Bernie's mittens on Facebook in the last few days. I said, no.
Biden doesn't care about that.
He doesn't give a shit.
I was like, I think you got that wrong. Yeah, it's like he's probably more like, thank God the attention's off me. I'm going to stick my nose to the grindstone, get my pen out.
He's done more in the first 2 days
Uh-huh.
than, you know, I mean, basically during the amount of time it would take Trump to play a couple rounds of golf.
Sure.
He's completely started to right this ship.
Right. And he knows what he's doing. He's got experience. That's not a bad thing.
Well, I'll tell you what, only person more qualified to be president possibly than Hillary Clinton is him.
Yeah.
Like, he's been in the Senate for 40 fucking years.
Right.
He's been the vice president. You know, he knows how his chops politically have to be about as sharp as anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And he's also been through, you know, I heard an interview with Ken Burns.
Mm-hmm.
And he was talking about like how this is like one of the historical moments in our country's, maybe one of the greatest crises, most deep crises we've ever faced, just because of the confluence of all this stuff.
Right.
But he talked about how FDR came from this really rich background, but because he had these health problems and struggles in his life, he was able to empathize with the little guy. And you know, it was his thought that it's Biden's character has sort of been forged with loss.
Yeah.
You know, he lost his wife and child in a car accident. That's something like you're going to be able to see pain in a way that Donald Trump's never. This is the most painful moment Donald Trump's ever experienced in his whole life right now.
Yep.
You know,
it's
so
all about him. You know,
he had no way to empathize. Like, he didn't give a he doesn't care, and he won't be able to care about anybody. I mean, it's like if you're truly mentally ill, they have drugs to treat you. But if you have a personality disorder, you're kind of out of luck.
Right.
There's no real
Well,
treatment
especially
for a
you're not going to
personality
want to, like, that disorder is going to, especially with that one, is you're not going to ever recognize it, because why would I want to give up loving myself so much?
Right.
It's awesome to love yourself.
Yeah.
Any psychologist that is even an armchair psychologist can tell you that shit is a front for not feeling good about yourself. You know, It's like,
right.
He had basically a verbally abusive dad who, you know, basically made winning the only thing that matters, and
A lot of things.
gave him enough money to basically, you are kind of a real loser if you can't be wealthy when you get $400 million to start off.
Yeah, a lot of things were coming out about his character that I was just, you know, that was the biggest red flag to me at first. It's like, he doesn't like dogs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, he doesn't have any friends, like no friends, just acquaintances that he knows through business. And
I mean, look at how bad it's going to get for him now.
Mhm.
Like, I mean, he's going to, I think he might kill himself, quote unquote, and he might Epstein too. He might get Epstein because he knows a lot now. And I mean, I just,
I thought about that, but I'm like, man, he's such a narcissist that he won't.
yeah, he probably wouldn't kill himself, but I definitely think there have to be people who are worried about the security risk of having that man alive.
Oh yeah,
because he's already definitely sold state secrets.
Oh,
absolutely.
He might not even sold them. He might have just been like, "Here, Vlad.
Now you owe me
Well,
one."
I mean, we did just. It hasn't been in the news much, but we did just have the worst breach of internet security from ever. I mean, they got into our government computers, and it was a foreign agent. It was foreign actors. It was espionage, and nobody talks about it. But pretty much, it looks to me like we're going to see in retrospect that Trump was actually working for the Russians more than for you and I.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, I've been saying that.
I mean, that doesn't sound that extreme to say, except for the fact that people have have you noticed, like, people are giving the Mueller report the shrug off like it didn't find obstruction of justice.
Oh, I'm still sending the link to people. I'll still be like, no, you need to fucking read the report.
Yeah, because if you go by Bill Barr's thing, it seems like nothing. It seems like it was inconclusive, or like they couldn't really prove it. And you hear these Trump supporters acting as if it was some witch hunt that was not even supposed to have been engaged in the first place. When in fact, if it was the Obama administration doing those exact things,
holy fuck!
Oh my God! Yeah.
It would have been investigated. I mean, let's be real. Hillary Clinton endured 11 hours of Senate grilling over 4 people dying at Benghazi when she basically she was just the figurehead that blame falls upon, but it wasn't her decision to like do anything that caused that to happen. It was a fucking terrorist attack.
Yeah.
And 4 people died. Yeah. But imagine, if there was the possibility that Obama got help from Brazil or from some kind, good God. Or Russia. I mean, Russia is supposed to be our mortal enemy,
And that's it. And I know a lot of people on the other side don't believe it, but if that shit had come out about Obama, I would have been like, fuck that guy, get him out of here now.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, hell yes. And that's the difference between the Democrats and Republicans, I think, fundamentally, is that this extreme, like, I'm on my team, you're on your team. It's not, there's a false equivalence that gets bandied about that isn't really true.
That's a big advantage for them.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, because they can just denude your whole message just by saying, oh, obviously you're biased, just like Fox.
Yeah.
Actually, no, there's fact-checking behind MSNBC. They are a news organization.
It's weighted for sure, but they don't post bullshit.
Yeah.
It's got something behind it.
Yeah. I mean, I think it was kind of an answer to Fox to have a weighted thing, news outlet. But in any case, it's insane to me that we have this epistemological crisis. I'm not sure how we get out of it now.
Yeah.
Now that we have differing truths.
So many.
I think it's going to be just information, just overload. It's just going to have to keep blasting that info because that's how they got to where they are, right? They just blasted their audience with information that was bullshit until they started believing it. So it's going to have to be the other. It's going to have to come from people that they'll listen to at least a little bit.
That's the key. That's the key. Yeah. It's if I blast the message, it doesn't do a whole lot of good. And if it's coming from David Pakman, it'd help me give me some ammo for some conversations. But you're not getting anybody to change their views unless they hear it from someone they already kind of respect and.
Right. Well, I mean, even look at the QAnon phenomenon, and it's like,
oh my God,
they don't even know who those people are.
Right.
It didn't even take that. It didn't take a trusted source. It just kept taking the
But the greatest, to me, this is something I kind of want to write a song about this.
Mm-hmm.
The QAnon thing was this LARP.
Yeah.
It was a live action role play. It was a fucking
scavenger
hunt game, To me, it's kind of a hilarious thing because I've even thought about like doing some sort of like album
Right.
release that had a puzzle component. Like Kevin and I have talked about that in the past. Never really done it. And I've talked about it with my cousin too. He's into stuff like this. He's a computer programmer. So we thought about like, an internet-based puzzle game that had you have to get clues and figure out.
Like an escape room.
Yeah, kind of like that, but it's like, it's a video game kind of vibe, but it's an album release. And
Right.
anyway, but this is, they did it. They did it even with the political movement. It's like, oh my God, it's so much.
Right.
It's just fucking meta art.
Yeah.
And I don't think that the people that started it actually intended for it to be what it became. They take some half truths. I mean, look, there are career professionals who don't change over with the new administration, who have an interest in keeping certain power structures in place. We all know that that's kind of true. But they took that little half truth and built around it like a whole hot dog bun of bullshit that really isn't related to that half truth at all. And sometimes a half truth, like a little nugget of truth embedded in an outright lie, is way more. It's way more effective than an outright lie.
Right. Or even just a sign or a symbol. There was this great article I read. It was some thread that Matt and I were both commenting on. I don't know whose it was this week, but they shared this article from the street, and it's called A Game Designer's Analysis.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I want to check that out.
Yeah, you should read that. But you're hitting the nail on the head there. Exactly what it was. And it's like so many things that it was just like these flags and how like human behaviorism and how we respond to like solving a puzzle.
Right.
And how those things are like deeply rooted in our.
It's addictive, right? It's like you ever play Tetris and when you go to sleep, you see the pieces falling in your head.
Oh, totally.
When you clear those.
Or even after a day of snowboarding, I can see the like terrain changes as I close my eyes, or whatever.
Right. So they're playing this game in their head, and where's the conspiracy going next? Well, mysteries abound.
Yeah.
Right. And they help each other figure it out. And you start getting a group think where they know where each other's going with their thoughts. So that confirms their thoughts because they're all thinking in the same weird bullshit way.
Right.
I mean, it's like the same reason Charles Manson was able to get people to kill on his behalf that weren't killers. Or Jonestown got all those people to drink the Kool-Aid, James Jones. Those they work through the same mechanisms, and you're playing on people's fears of inadequacy and wanting to explain why things didn't work to their liking or whatever, and you play on their fear that it's going to be worse, and like the things. If you've read any of this stuff, I haven't spent too much time on it, but I have like looked at it just to kind of see, like what are some of the, like all you have to do is follow somebody's comments and click on their page and start reading. But I mean, some of this stuff got really like out there.
No, sure.
I mean, I believed, I've been willing to embrace the possibility that they let 9/11 happen. I never really believed they did it, but I've tried that theory on for a while, and I actually don't know for sure conclusively that they didn't allow it to happen.
Yeah.
I think that they needed a Pearl Harbor type moment to pass the Patriot Act and a bunch of other shit.
I think there was complacency that allowed it to happen. I don't know that it was necessarily a conspiracy for it to happen, but just like if this does happen, it's going to work for us.
Right. But I'd say that would maybe be the equivalent on the left in terms of like a wild, like spun conspiracy. And there's a little more evidence to support that idea than there is on any of these things I could read from the like it was all really oblique, and I mean, when you start talking about a pedophile ring run out of a pizza joint,
right at that point you should be thinking maybe this is nuts.
Hang on.
And not to mention the fact that like the people making that accusation are actually like credibly accused themselves of sex trafficking.
Sure.
Like it's kind of crazy, but like,
Yeah.
Epstein was really doing that.
Yeah, Tom Hanks is a pedophile. I mean, it's like, seriously.
No,
Right.
come on. But see, it accuses, when you accuse people of what you're doing,
Yeah.
it sort of denudes their,
Uh-huh.
because whenever they might come at you later and be like, you're doing that, they could say, see, you're just
They're
throwing
just
it
saying
back.
that because I said that about them.
Right.
It's like a seventh grade strategy for how to avoid, losing the argument.
Right, but that's where a lot of us are mentally, unfortunately.
Well, that's where I was getting to when we were, I don't really want to talk about Trump the whole time.
Right.
I think it's more interesting to talk about why he appeals to so many people.
Right.
I mean, he is the temporarily embarrassed millionaire in all of us.
Yeah.
I think part of the reason people that are poor and white and vote Republican do so, I think they're just voting their aspirations.
Right. They think they can get there.
Yeah.
And I think Trump is like a symbol of like that you could be a dumbass and still get rich.
Mm-hmm.
Like if that guy can do it, it's kind of like it's sort of like the way I think some people enjoy punk rock, or some punk rock, it's like the fact that like it's not really played with ultimate proficiency
Right.
makes it easier for me to put myself up there and be like,
Hell,
I could visualize doing it,
That's why we first started playing punk in a band when I was in school, was because, we thought, well, hell, if they can do it. And
Right.
it's not really tricky. It's not like prog rock.
Yeah, it makes it look simpler than it is.
It makes it accessible. And I think like, Trump made it accessible for racists to be accepted again. He made it acceptable for like
Completely.
a small-minded, selfish person to be lauded.
Right.
Because our society has all these messages that are counter to that. You're supposed to give back. But look, even it's not just Trump. Like the people that have like made all their money like during the pandemic, like Bezos is,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, he's like added a third more during the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
Why isn't he saying I'm gonna pay for some public thing? Like
Right.
why isn't he giving anything back like Carnegie did? Rockefeller did. Those guys built schools and libraries and shit.
Al Capone did.
Yeah, even Al Capone gave back. But like, we're not going to see Bezos
No.
building any fucking libraries. I don't think.
No.
I mean, he made $13 billion like yesterday.
That's crazy. Yeah.
You know how much $13 billion is?
No.
Yeah.
It's impossible to comprehend.
That's for me. Yeah.
It really is. But I mean, it's like if a dollar were a second, like 1 million would be like 24 days,
Yeah.
but like 1 billion would be like 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy. There's a quote from this article that I posted that really hit me, and I think we need to use more language like this. Maybe it can be helpful. And this was written by Will Hurd, who's like a retired Republican in Texas.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, if you elevate a flag that has someone's name on it to be the same level that you elevate our national flag, then you are not a patriot. You are a part of a cult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really fucking hard to argue with that.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I've been watching that series on Pretend It's a City. I think it's Fran Lebowitz, the writer in New York. Just great. But I read a quote of hers earlier, something to the effect of like, there's no such thing as earning $1 billion. You steal $1 billion. You earn $10 an hour.
Right.
Right.
Right. That's true. I mean, there's also this idea that you're always, doing it yourself.
Mm.
When in fact, anybody that succeeds, even to a small degree, had help.
Oh, sure.
Right.
And there's not a one of us who just like, I mean, maybe it's a rare story where somebody didn't get any help at all from anybody, but I just haven't really heard one.
No, I mean, just think of the government just in the regard of, I only use what I pay for, and I pay for. Really, how much like road do you think you could buy that would just be yours, wasn't paid by tax dollars?
Yeah.
How many fire department you
Well, yeah, and that's another. When Obama tried to explain all of that, right? He got shit. Oh, you didn't build that. Well, I didn't do it.
No, you didn't build the bridge.
You really didn't.
Yeah.
You're taking it way out of context.
Yeah, and it's really kind of I think kind of we've been delivered this message from Reagan from the time Reagan said the government is the problem.
Right.
And the worst 5 words you could say is "I'm from the government and I'm here to help" or whatever, you know.
Right.
Or, that was like his
Joke,
big
yeah.
quote.
Mhm.
Yeah, his joke. I think what that has had a deep impact on us, and like it was a very effective message. The Democrats have never been very good at messaging like that.
Yeah.
At least not since FDR. Even Kennedy's, his messaging wasn't really all about equality. You know, even though he was right at the nascent period of the civil rights era, you know, he was like, he was racist adjacent. Let's put it that way.
Sure.
He and Bobby came around, but they grew up in Massachusetts, you know, as rich white people.
Uh-huh.
And, you know, our country is just now getting to the point where we're willing to collectively look at how institutional racism exists.
Uh-huh.
We've been actually up until now, as a general population, kind of denying it.
Yeah.
Even, you know, as the white population has, that's for sure.
Sure.
And I think it's been convenient for people to ignore those things
Uh-huh.
because they're ugly truths. And until we come to terms with the fact that we have never lived up to our promise,
Mm-hmm.
we're going to keep having these problems. And I think the best way to come to terms with that is to actually hold these people to account right now.
Mhm.
Like the ones who actually perpetrated this stuff, you know, Ted Cruz and Hawley, they need to be politically pilloried.
Yeah.
And they need to be run out of politics. Neither one of them needs to have a career in politics from this point forward.
Apologies for being from Missouri and Josh Hawley, by the way.
Yeah, you've done better with political contributions over there. You got a VP,
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah,
Yep.
right. I mean, and she is, I think, a great representation of the side of our country that's badass.
Right.
You know, like the people in our country who are problem solvers and who are tough-minded and who are not going to just roll over.
Right.
There's a lot of people on the left who are actually willing to fight for this shit. I think it's just been there was an era of people who grew up in Jim Crow and came to power during Southern strategy,
Mm-hmm.
and Biden is one of those people. So if Biden can make a heroic shift from, you know, running scared from electoral politics to make policies that are, I mean, you know, it was Clinton that freed the banks and created the prison industry. He did that to make compromise with these motherfuckers.
Right.
Those weren't his policies. Those were his concessions, but they turned out to be some of the worst things that had happened in the post-war era.
Right.
And so we can no longer afford to make compromise in this way. And if the new generation of politicians understands this, but the Dianne Feinsteins and frankly up until now, I'm going to give him credit until he proves me wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Biden, you know, he's been a banking oriented centrist, and right now, you know, the banks are going to play ball because if the economy totally tanks, they fucking lose too.
Yeah.
But once things start to recover, they're going to try to start talking about, you know, not wanting to spend money on social programs again,
Mm-hmm.
and trying to, you know, to privatize more of the society, and they're going to fight against efforts to, you know, to do this infrastructure project because they don't want Biden to get FDR credit.
Yeah.
Because you guys know that if he does like a jobs program that builds a whole green energy grid, and it'll revitalize our economy, and he'll be a hero.
Do you know who thinks he's going to have success? Did you watch the exit speech from the Air Force Base before Trump left?
No.
He was just talking about, I think this next administration, he wouldn't say Biden by name, but I think this next administration is going to be successful. And it was basically like already grabbing credit for any successes.
Oh yeah, of course. He wants to be able to say that it's because of things he did, of course.
Right. So he thinks they're going to do okay. And basically it's, I want to take credit for that shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Finally, on his exit, his self-interest aligns with ours.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because like obviously if the country spirals out of control and you know, our return to leadership doesn't right the ship,
Yeah.
we still have to outrun this pandemic.
Yeah, we do. And that's the big point I was going to make earlier. What you were saying, it's like, stay vigilant. A lot of people, I think, are just, they're kind of hinging on this idea, well, the vaccine's going to roll out soon. Everybody's going to have it just, hang in there and do nothing. No, we got to keep, just like you've been doing out there, plugging along, keep working.
And just wear the masks. And, we have air filtration in here and we're washing our hands all the time. We're just trying to, basically this is not that different other than wearing the mask all the time. I've always been trying to stay. You're in a confined space a lot of the time with people. I'm just always trying to be conscious of not getting sick, and
Yep.
getting enough sunlight, so your immune system is good and strong.
Mm-hmm.
Like, those things don't change. It's just, you've got to be smart right now. Like I've canceled 3 flights this year.
Yeah.
Because it didn't make sense to go to Paris or Chicago or Florida.
No matter how bad we want to, boy, do I want to.
I know. I'll get back on the plane. I love traveling. I love playing abroad, and I can't wait to do it again. And I'm just excited to position ourselves so that we're ready to help people make records and keep making our own and play some shows when we can. It's going to be another year before we can play shows. So by then, I'm going to have a dozen records finished.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I'm looking forward to that.
Anything else you want to drop? Anything else anybody check out? Mention?
Maybe just encourage people to, send me your tracks once this special hits.
Cool.
Yeah, we can use your support. Keep the amps on. For the next 6 months, we're going to have to grind a little bit, I think.
Yeah, great talking to you. We had a good time.
Yeah, it was a great conversation.
But hey, everybody listening to Undetermined the Podcast, a special guest, friend of the show, Chris McGrew of Griddle and Dungeon Weed. Look for the new albums and new tracks to be dropping soon. So have a good night, everybody.
Yay! Thanks, Chris.
Yay! Thank you, guys.